Call the order the Sparks City Council meeting for September 10th, 2012, with a roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
City Clerk Patterson here. Council members Ratty. Here. Lawson.
Here.
Kerrigan.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
City Manager Carey.
Here.
City Attorney Adams.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, Pastor Linda Anderson, are you here? Come on down, Linda, for our invocation. He's got a microphone for you.
Thank you for the great privilege of praying for you. This is an echo of what I do daily as I pray for each of you every day. And Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for the city of Sparks. We thank you that you love our city. And Father, we ask for great wisdom. We ask for discernment. We ask for favor. And Father, we ask for blessing upon everything that is done here and harmony in the name of Jesus. Thank you, Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Linda. Mr. Schmidt, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Martini is not feeling well today, so give him our best, and he should be back next meeting. Comments from the public. I do not have any cards. Anybody wishing to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back for approval of the agenda. Anybody wishing to take anything out of order? I think 6.4 we're going to pull. Doug?
Yes.
6.4. Okay, any more? Looking for motion? Mr. Lawson?
Move to approve the agenda minus item 6.4.
Mr. Schmidt? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, recommendation to approve the minutes of 3.1, consideration of possible approval of the minutes of the regular Sparks City Council meeting for August the 13th, 2012 and August 27th, 2012. Ms. Ratty?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Mr. Lawson?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 4.1, commendation. We have 4 today. The first one up is Mr. Norm DeAnda. Come on up, Norm. Welcome.
You can have a seat right there, man. Today, it's my pleasure to read this commendation for Norm today. Whereas the City of Sparks recognizes Norm DeAnda of Q&D Construction, who is doing his part to help revive the Reno Sparks economy by financing and constructing the 4,500-seat Wild West Motorsports Park east of Sparks. And whereas the Wild West Motorsports Park, that's a mouthful by itself, was designed to draw participants and race watchers to the area, in turn boosting the local economy with visitors patronizing local restaurants, hotels, and retail. And whereas the Wild West Motorsports Park recently hosted the Toyota Silver State Showdown that was televised nationally with the hopes of broadening the tourism base. And whereas the City of Sparks supports the Wild West Motorsports Park, there we go, got it through that time, and encourages local residents and tourists to do the same. And whereas Norm DeAnda, who has been a visionary, a prominent businessman, and a builder in the Reno Sparks area for nearly 50 years, Mr. DeAnda has contributed in building a large portion of the region and continues to support and entice economic development into the area. Now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, do hereby commend Norm DeAnda for his tireless efforts on economic development and his vision to build the Wild West Motorsports Park. Thank you.
Ed, members of the council, and all the staff and audience here today. I greatly appreciate this. It's something that you always treasure when you get something like this, but it's not necessary. Wild West Motorsports, in conjunction with Lucas Oil, probably put on one of the greatest new events for Reno Sparks and Northern Nevada that we'll see for a long time. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the plan is in the future, Lucas Oil will be under construction this winter to build another set of bleachers for about 4,500 people. We already have the concrete poured, so we'll have about 7,000 to 7,500 permanent seats next year. And we're meeting with them in a few weeks here that we will be looking to try to get 4 regional races next year, which are smaller than the major event like we put on this year. Major event will probably be the same weekend between Hot August Nights and the Rib Cook-Off. And Lucas is excited. We've had nothing but great comments from the drivers and the sponsors about what went on here. And one of the most important things that I gathered out of everybody's conversation is the hospitality that was shown by people of Sparks and Reno and the whole community. They were overwhelmed at how the people in this community react when something new comes to town. And they were very pleased with the attendance. The attendance was probably as large as or maybe larger than some of the other tracks on a newly opened day. But we'll have those numbers, and hopefully we'll have a deal in the paper here within the next week to 2 weeks that'll tell a little more about it. And also it'll be on television. There'll be a notice in the paper. There's going to be 14 hours of TV time on 5 different major channels that you'll be able to catch the race. So please take the opportunity to do it. I think this is just a first step in trying to create something that Reno's needed for a long time, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and we're just looking to how do we grow something for our community in the future. So thank you very much.
And Norm, that's just a small portion of everything you do for this community, and we do really appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for everything you do. Thank you. Okay, 4.2, proclamation for Obesity Prevention Awareness Day. Kelly, are you here? Come on down, Kelly. Welcome. Okay, whereas over 34% of children in Washoe County are overweight or obese, and 60% of adults in Reno and Sparks are overweight or obese, and whereas unhealthy eating patterns and too little physical activity are primary contributing factors to overweight and obesity, and whereas obesity can lead to severe and chronic health problems during childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, including heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and asthma, and whereas obesity-related conditions now account for nearly 1 out of every $10 spent on medical costs, and whereas there are concrete steps we can take right away as concerned family members, educators, planners, health care providers, service providers, and community leaders to ensure that our communities, youth institutions, and places of work combat overweight and obesity by supporting physical activity and promoting healthy eating. Now, therefore, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim September 19, 2012 as Obesity Prevention Awareness Day.
Council. I'd like to thank the members of the City Council as well as the mayor in his absence for the proclamation. We are holding an event on this day, September 19th, to work towards obesity prevention. We have got a full-day event at UNR, which I would like to invite the City Council members to, as well as those in the audience and the community members. I've left some information pamphlets about the event. I'll also leave some with Ms. Patterson before I leave. And as the proclamation reads, we've got over half of our adults that are overweight and obese. We've got 1 in 3 of our children that are overweight and obese. And so as a community, there are steps that we can take to combat this. And this is a great event to learn more about what we can do as citizens, as community leaders, and in our day-to-day lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Go ahead. Ms. Ratty.
I just wanted to congratulate the Health District and the staff in particular at the Health District for doing some very good work around obesity and as well as engaging a lot of community partners. I have attended this event a number of times, and I would recommend that anybody who has an interest in this topic attend it because it is a high-quality event and you get some great information. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Sparks Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Day. That'd be you, Mr. Kerrigan.
Anybody here to accept it? Come on down. I'll go ahead and read this for the mayor. Whereas organ and tissue donations are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need, and whereas more than 114,000 individuals nationwide are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and every 11 minutes another name is added to that list. Every day 18 people die waiting for a life-saving organ donation, and whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lung, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives, donation of tissue can enhance the lives of up to 50 others. And whereas tissue donations can help burn victims heal, help replace shattered bones, or repair damaged tendons and ligaments, millions of lives each year are saved and enhanced by donors. And whereas Sierra Nevada Donate Life is working on raising awareness in the Northern Sierra, and the world as awareness is the key to saving lives. And whereas today at the Sparks Marina we join with Sierra Nevada Donate Life, their sponsors, family, and friends in celebrating the success of organ and tissue transplantation and honoring our donors and donor families that will be forever our heroes. And whereas the Sierra Nevada Donate Life Walk features a scenic walk around the Sparks Marina, entertainment, a raffle, and donor recognition, Nevada has an online donation registration website that can be found at www.donatelifenevada.org. And now, therefore, Gino R. Martini, the mayor of Sparks, do hereby proclaim September 16, 2012 as Sparks Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Day.
I think we've got a photo opportunity right here.
Turn around, Mikey. Oh, hey, good. I got to pick the right one.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem Smith and council members. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Tracy Copeland, and I'm a liver transplant recipient. In 1998, my liver died suddenly for reasons that we still don't know. One day I was healthy, the next day I was sick. Over a 3-month period, my liver rapidly died. And on March 9th, 1998, I found myself in a coma at Stanford University. At the same time, there was a young man in Arizona, also in a coma. He'd suffered a radical motorcycle accident, and he suffered some severe head trauma. After 3 surgeries, the doctor told his family that he would not recover. And his family was faced with a decision that no parent should ever have to make. And on that day, they decided to disconnect Terry from life support. On that day, they made another critical decision. They decided to donate Terry Snow's organs. And if it wasn't for the decision that that family made that day, myself and a lung transplant recipient and 2 kidney recipients and a heart transplant recipient would not be alive today. So the heroes here are truly the donors. On the 1-year anniversary of my transplant, my donor family came up here to Sparks, Nevada to meet me. And it was just my unique blessing to share a relationship with my donor family. And it's through this opportunity with my donor family and my own transplantation that I feel it's my duty and my calling to raise awareness for the tremendous need for organ and tissue donation. I had no idea what it meant. I had the little pink dot on my license, because it seems like the right thing to do, but I had no inclination of what that dot meant. I didn't know of the thousands upon thousands of people that are on the waiting list, and how fortunate and blessed I was to be the one to receive life that day. Today, there's over 130,000 people in the United States alone waiting for a life-saving organ. And so I'm truly blessed with the opportunity with a lot of other community members here, a totally volunteer organization that comes together to raise awareness for the need for organ and tissue donation and honor our donors and our donor families. And this Sunday, we're having a walk at the beautiful Sparks Marina, and we're so blessed to have this venue, and it's just such an incredible venue, and we're thankful for it. It's just a short, little, wonderful walk around the marina where we'll share some unique stories about organ and transplantation. So we would like to invite you all to come, and my beautiful assistant, Vanna, has some gifts for you and some invitations. So thank you again for this opportunity and for this blessing that I have, and we hope to see you at the walk.
I know you can sign up to be a donor when you get your driver's license. Are there other ways that people can sign up?
Yeah, actually, we do have. In the state of Nevada, we now have an online registry. So if you go to www.donatelifenevada.org, you can sign up online there. And we really encourage people to do that. It's very important. The most important thing is to really talk to your family. So, if you're, God forbid that anybody is ever faced with that kind of decision, but if they ever are, it's generally a unique decision. It's a tragedy. Your family's already grieving, and they're not able to be faced with just one more thing. But you can go online in California and Nevada and register to be a donor, and we would encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Okay, 4.4, International Day of Peace. Ms. Ratty. Is there anybody here to accept this? Hi. And give your name for the record.
My name is Pat Koya.
Pat Koya, okay.
Pat. So whereas September 21st is the International Day of Peace as established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1981, and whereas the International Day of Peace is an annual day of nonviolence devoted to commemorating and strengthening the ideals of peace both within and among all nations and peoples, and whereas the International Day of Peace will serve as a reminder to all peoples of our personal and planetary progress towards peace, and whereas anyone, anywhere can celebrate the International Day of Peace as simply and individually as by lighting a candle at noon, and whereas the International Day of Peace has grown to include millions of people in all parts of the world, and whereas the International Day of Peace is an opportunity to make peace in our own relationships as well as promote peace in the larger conflicts of our world. Now, therefore, Gina R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim September 21st as the International Day of Peace.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Koya, and I'm a member of the Sierra Interfaith Action for Peace, which is a group, a local peace group. Sierra, we call ourselves SIOP, Sierra Interfaith Action for Peace, and we have been holding a peace vigil for over 10 years in front of the federal building in Reno to hold a space for peace. And we've been doing this for over 10 years, and the vigil, again, is to hold a space for peace. We have readings and music, and I guess it's an effort to just remind people who attend the vigil and passerbys that there are alternate ways to solve the world's problems other than war, and we try to explore different avenues for that. I want to thank you for this, and we really appreciate it. Also, we have a gift. It's a world peace flag. I'll hold it up. And we're hoping, this is a gift to the city of Sparks.
Very nice.
And we're hoping that, if possible, that you can fly this on September 21st, which is the United Nations International Day of Peace.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, move on to consent items. Anybody like to pull one? Okay, looking for a motion? Mr. Schmidt?
Motion to approve items 5.1 through 5.13 is outlined by staff.
Mr. Lawson?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.1, general business 6.1. Consideration and possible approval to rescind the amendment to the interlocal government agreement for the Sparks Senior Citizen Center dated July 25th, 2011, between Washoe County and the City of Sparks. Tracy?
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Smith and council members. Tracy Dominguez, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm before you again today regarding the Sparks Senior Citizen Center and the possibility of rescinding the amendment that we entered into last year to the original agreement. The original agreement for historical purposes was that the city maintain the exterior of the building and property while the Washoe County Senior Services maintained, staffed, and programmed the inside of the building. A year ago, we entered into agreement to assist them to keep the doors open with our staff and with the intent of increasing programming. That's been a year now since we entered into that, and I'm requesting that we remove that amendment to the agreement, but at the same time, I'm before you to request that the city consider supporting Washoe County Senior Services in the amount of $21,500 on an annual basis to help fund a 3/4 time position which would keep the facility open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And Washoe County staff is here for any questions that you might have. I also want to clarify a couple of things on my report. I did have 4 o'clock throughout. It would be 3:30, 9 a.m. to 3:30 with a half-hour lunch is what the staff schedule that would be hired by the county. Also, the $21,500 was intended for an entire year. By the time, if this is approved, we enter into this agreement, a quarter of the year will be passed. So it would be a lesser amount for this fiscal year of about approximately $16,000. This will also, they have $16,000 in place for this position. This is a supplementary request to fund that position, and then our staff would no longer be required to be in the facility. And I have Grady Tarbutton here if you have any questions as well.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt?
Tracy, how's the lunch covered? Are we covering the lunch?
The lunch program is covered and supervised by the county. I don't know
So they bring
how.
somebody else in for that half hour, or?
Oh, I don't know how that half-hour lunch will be covered.
For the record, Grady Tarbutton, Director of Washoe County Senior Services. We have AARP positioned right there today that this person would, they would be able to manage the lunch hour.
Okay. So we had a problem with the AARP person before being able to manage the building without staff there, but we're going to do it for a half hour, just a half-hour lunch period. Will be under volunteers or your AARP.
Please say again. I didn't quite get you.
From our previous conversations, we had issues with the AARP being there to manage the building. It's the reason why we have to hire a staff person. But we're going to have the AAR people manage the building for the half hour every day.
we would be able to either manage it. The issue for Washoe County is having staff on site to oversee operations. They will be there for their lunch for most of the time, and we will just schedule either the AARP person or the person that manages the meal site for us to make sure that everything's covered.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
So the person covering lunch is covering the lunch for the employee, right?
Please say again.
The person that you're going to have volunteer to cover the lunch half hour is for the employee going to lunch, not to help serve or anything like that?
No, they would be covering the front desk.
For the person that we hire?
For the person that is hired.
Just to be
correct.
clear on that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Ratty?
Perhaps to provide some clarification, so during the lunch program, there's an outside vendor who comes in and provides the lunch service. And so that's happening, so it also, but what that also means is that there's additional staffing in the building during that time. Plus, we have an AARP person to cover the lunch break for the employee.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
Well, this puts me in a really tough position because understanding the importance of the senior program over there and having the senior center open, but it really amounts to we're taxing ourselves twice as Sparks residents by providing this funding. So that the part I'm struggling with is that, this is a county program. We are paying taxes for this program, and now the city of Sparks is picking up this shortfall. So it's tough for me to justify that, although it's not that tough when I look out here to see you guys. And, I'm going to support the motion, but it's something I think you guys, as seniors, need to talk to the county about also and get involved in and have them provide the funding. We're going to make sure you stay open this year, but we don't know what's going to happen next year or year after. So it's a tough thing for me to tax myself twice, and that's really my philosophical problem. But at the same time, the benefit that goes to our senior community overrides that factor. So I'm going to support.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, Ed took a little of my thunder. I basically was going to say that, when we came up with this idea the last time we met, is because Washoe County's not covering it. I want everybody out there that are voters, pick up the phone, call your county commissioners, and tell them that, okay? Because it is a county program, and the city of Sparks is paying twice for this. All of us are, because we're all taxpayers. So make sure you pick up the phone numbers. If you don't have them, wait around. I'll give you all of them, okay? So you can call every single county commissioner and tell them, okay? Because for sure, some of you called me about this, and I want you to just kind of pass it forward for me, because they should be covering this. And later on today, you'll see that we're going to do a couple things, if it passes, for the school district on a couple schools that are in Sparks. That really is, under the responsibility of the Washoe County School District too. So,
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I echo those comments, but I also want to go ahead and make it reality for everybody. This is only good till June 30th, 2013, correct? This agreement right now. We're all going to be back here again before July 1st of next year, so this is a very temporary solution. It can't be the long-term solution.
And I'm sure Grady will give you everybody's phone number if you talk to him.
Please say again.
That's right. All right. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to share one thing. I can't recall who had requested I bring some numbers forward at this meeting, but we were keeping track through July and August. Now, it's not a really good time to track things because we had major road construction that did affect seniors and how they got in and out of that facility, and then we had the interior redesigned, and that affected their participation as well. But from our staff point of view, Fridays for the most part closed at 4. Tuesdays and Fridays we were closed by 2, and Wednesdays and Thursdays we were closed by 4. The two programs that appear to go until 4 o'clock are bridge and duplicate bridge. So with maybe a minor adjustment to their program, which is currently 12:30 to 4, perhaps they could end at 3:30 without too much disruption to their programming. But in a month, an average number of participations is 640 people between the hours of noon and 4.
And we were just there for ribbon cutting. Was that the Chambers class, Mr.
Yes.
Perry?
Their
Leadership class of
leadership
2012, and they spent how much money on the inside of that? They did a great job.
They weren't expecting to be so successful in their fundraising, but I believe it was $19,000 was
Yeah,
the
new carpet paint. They got a big screen TV donated by
Yes.
one of the gentlemen over there.
The actual cash that they raised was $19,000. They say the project value is in excess of $35,000.
And there was a big class, and I know they were all over there working, so.
They did a beautiful
They
job
did.
inside. If you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. It's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
It's very nice. Okay, Ms. Ratty.
So I was going to go ahead and make a motion that the city council rescind the amendment to the interlocal government agreement for the Sparks Senior Citizen Center dated July 25th, 2011, between Washoe County and the city of Sparks, thereby returning to the original agreement. Oh, good, it came right back up. And I guess my question is, so the motion in the staff report doesn't include the allocation of dollars, so I'm going to add that on. So we're returning to the original agreement.
Correct.
And then we would be amending that agreement to provide funding for Washoe County Senior Services for 1 year to fund a 3/4 time position to be on site from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Fridays.
Okay. Mr. Kerrigan.
Going to second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just quickly, it wouldn't be for a full year. It's just till June 30th.
I think I was going to suggest that clarification and end
Okay.
date of June 30th,
And then
13.
then we have to readdress this sometime in the spring, early summer.
So I would modify my motion to include a start date of,
Immediately, isn't it?
Well, I can't give you an exact start date, but it'd become effective once the county commission took the same action at
Okay.
their end. So that's going to be on the agenda
okay,
early
so
in October.
We're hoping in
effective
October.
as soon as possible with the contract to be prorated for that start date, and that we would revisit this in the spring of 2013 for the next year.
Mike, you seconded the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Carey?
Just to clarify your intent, you're wanting to look at this as part of the budget process for next year, so that when this allocation, if it was something you wanted to move forward as a council, you would include it in your early budget deliberations. Is that your intent?
So I'd clarify the motion to say yes, as opposed to looking at it again at the spring, as to consider it as part of our budget process next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, I hope we don't look at this. This is Washoe County, and I hope they put it in their budget, but just in case they don't, then I'm sure we'll do it again. So, but everybody out there, please call up your county commissioners, because they got to look at the same thing in when, November or October?
Yeah.
When are they looking at this, October?
Yes, probably
Okay.
October 10th.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Just to let the council be aware, I've requested that this and similar items be on discussion for next Tuesday's retreat.
Okay. All right. Ms. Reddy?
But I think the usage statistics are challenging, not only because of construction and because of the remodel, but just there's been so much uncertainty at the center over the last almost 3 years now with the budget cycles that I believe it's affecting the programming. That when you don't know if the building's going to be open and you don't know if a program's going to be there or not going to be there, it makes it hard to do what the senior center has always done a fabulous job of, which is to recruit volunteers who lead classes and lead activities. And so my perception is, I don't have the data, but my perception is from when I was first involved on the Senior Services Committee 4 years ago when I was first elected, there were more activities because there was more stability, and they were not necessarily staff-led activities, they were volunteer-led activities, and that it's been harder to maintain and recruit to that because there's been so much uncertainty. So the only thing that I would hope is that the county does step up and provide some certainty over the long haul, because I think you'll see the usage numbers go up with more activity, and I don't think we can have more activity until we have some certainty about the future of the facility.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grady. Okay, I know our meetings are exciting, but if you'd like to leave, you can, we'll hold the doors open for you. Okay, 6.2, consideration of possible action on appeal of a denial of business license for Michael R. Boer. Mr. Thornley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We are here today on an appeal of a denial of a business license. Fortunately, we don't get too many of these, but I think in resolving today's appeal, a little bit of history would be helpful in understanding precisely how we got where we are. Back in April, the Sparks Planning Commission denied a special use permit for Mr. Boer's property, which is at 1964 Fraser Avenue. The special use permit would have allowed for a contractor's office and outdoor storage at the location. The reason it was denied, from my position on the dais, was essentially because a number of neighbors came to the meeting and complained about the condition of the property. The property has been kind of in troubling condition from a code enforcement perspective since the late 80s. In our files going back, we can see that it's kind of been a nuisance in terms of the way outdoor storage has been conducted there illegally since 1988. The previous owner had also applied for a special use permit for a contractor's office and outdoor storage in 1986, and that use permit was approved by the Planning Commission, but it was never issued because the 7 conditions that were attached to the permit were never satisfied. So Mr. Boer, I think, to his credit, came in and asked for a special use permit. Planning staff supported that request. Unfortunately, Mr. Boer was not available at the Planning Commission meeting, and therefore he couldn't address any concerns that the Planning Commission may have had. An additional concern of theirs is that there's been an outstanding building permit for the building on the property that has never been finalized. And as you go back through the history of the file, I believe a kind of a drop-dead date was set in 1997 for the final inspection. This building permit has been open, closed, resurrected, etc., through 3 building officials here at the City of Sparks. So, with the denial of the special use permit by the Planning Commission back in April, Mr. Boer would have had the opportunity to make a similar appeal to the City Council within 21 days of the date of that action. Mr. Boer filed a notice of appeal on the 22nd day. In Nevada, appellate time limitations are mandatory and jurisdictional, which means that the City Council does not have the authority to order the special use permit issued or otherwise reverse the judgment of the Planning Commission with respect to the special use permit. Fortunately, I think the Planning Commission denied the permit without prejudice, which means that Mr. Boer could reapply at any point. He did not need to wait the 6-month period that is traditionally associated with a denial of a special use permit, which, just for the record, would be in 3 weeks' time here on October 5th. But he has not to date reapplied. And based on that consideration, when his business license came up for renewal, it was not renewed because it is not legal to operate the business he is operating at this location. Also on today's agenda is item 6.6, which is the potential direction to staff to look at removing the transitional overlay in the Conductor Heights neighborhood, and that would apply to this property, and it would abrogate the requirement of the special use permit on this property. The difficulty for Mr. Boer is that in the interim, before a Planning Commission meeting and at least 2 more City Council meetings, it would still be illegal to operate his business without a special use permit. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at this time, or you could ask Mr. Boer and his representative, Mr. Gary Pichelli, any questions you might have.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Doug, I missed that.
Okay.
That in 30 minutes, we're going to hear item 6.6. If we
That's right.
approve 6.6, this business would not have to go through a special use permit to be able to operate the business there.
Eventually, that is absolutely correct. If you approve item 6.6, it is direction to the
To start the
planning staff
process.
to start the process.
Okay, so,
And if you get through the end of that process, Mr. Boer would no longer need a special use permit to conduct the business he has been conducting on his property.
and what are we looking at, 6 months to get the stuff through for 6.6?
I couldn't put a time frame on it, but I think Jim Rundle is here.
He's shaking his head yes.
Okay.
He's shaking his head yes, so 6 months or something. So we're talking about a 6 months time period in there, and this business has been in operations for how long?
More than 20 years, it looks like, from my reading of the file.
How many of the issues, and I'm understanding the big issue besides the permit is the condition of the property?
Well, the condition of the property and the building permit, as you, if that's the permit you're referring to, or were you referring to the special use permit?
The building permit.
Yeah, those are the
It hasn't
issues.
been completed since 97. Now, even if we do 6.6, we go through the whole process, he doesn't need a special use permit.
He does.
Do we still have the issue there with the condition of the property without a special use permit? That is still, that's not going to go away no matter what?
I do not think that, given the photographs that I've seen, I do not think that that issue will go away without a substantial undertaking from Mr. Boer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Pro Tem.
Ms. Ratty?
I just want to make sure that I heard or understood what you said. So because of it was filed on the 22nd day, we don't have the authority to grant the appeal anyway.
Well, no. You do not have the authority, in my opinion, to order the special use permit issued. I suppose in sort of a perfunctory way, you do probably have the authority to order a business license issued, but it would still be the illegal operation of a business, even if he had a business license. And in general, our business license code suggests that we should not issue business licenses for illegal businesses.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Doug, do we have the ability, since it's we're looking at a business license or a special use permit?
In my opinion, today you are looking exclusively at a business license. I believe that the special use permit history was appropriate to give you in terms of explaining how we got to the denial of the business license.
Because I was going to suggest we send it back to the planning commission for a special use permit.
But
we can't.
I think you could ask Mr. Boer if he was interested in pursuing a special use permit.
Because he's going to have to get a special use permit even if we said we'll give him a business license.
Yes, I think that's exactly right.
Okay, then I'd like to ask him. Everybody finished? I'd just say, would you like to do that, Mr. Boer? Come on up.
My name's Gary McKelly. I represent Mr. Boer. If I could respond, have a couple minutes to respond to the city's position on this matter. Mr. Chairman and members of the council, my name's Gary McKelly. I'm retained counsel for the contractor, Acoustical Dry Services, and it's a DBA for the owner, Michael Boer, who's here today. Now, this matter concerns the appeal of the denial of the business license as indicated. I might point out, before we ask for our requested relief, that Mr. Boer has had a business license on the property for over 26 years at 1964 Fraser Avenue, Sparks, Nevada, without the need of any special use permit. There's been no actions until recently by the part of the city officials to require him to use the special to obtain a special use permit within this zoning. Now, the description of the project and the parcel is, it's a project, a description was outside storage with private fencing at 1964 Fraser Avenue, and the lot size is approximately 7,000 square feet. Existing zoning, industrial/transitional overlay, and the master planned use for the project is contractor warehouse. All surrounding properties, contiguous properties, have outside storage, except to the property to the south, which is vacant land owned by, I believe, the Airport Authority. Having said that, I'll go directly to Councilman Mr. Kerrigan's question as to what do we want. First of all, there's a couple of minor things and then a major thing. The minor thing is that Mr. Boer received a letter from Mr. Adams, Sparks City Attorney 6812, that as reasons to denying his application for a business license, that there's no business entity listed with the Nevada Secretary of State for Acoustical and Drywall Services, LLC. I think that's a staff mistake, but the true answer there, he's been operating as a DBA and not under this particular LLC for some time, and I'd like that corrected. The next item was that, and I believe counsel for the city has clarified this, because Mr. Brewer got another notice, and it said, a notice 53112 from the code enforcement officer that the Sparks Municipal Code prescribed that you'll need to wait another 6 months to apply. Your denial for before you may reapply for a special use permit. I think that's been clarified. That's one of the points that we wanted to raise, that the Planning Commission decided without prejudice, and I've got a letter and a document to that effect if necessary, to be seen by the council. I don't believe it is at this point. But the most important thing that we're asking for in our requested relief is that he be able to reapply with the Planning Commission for a special use permit with a waiver of any additional fees. He's paid $2,000 to do that. He's been a construction business. The rationale is it's been so expensive, and he just can't go back down there and pay another chunk of money to redo this again, and we'd ask the relief, for that relief. The alternative to that is that we believe that this governmental body has the power to adopt the planning department's findings and conditions when they pass through their staff report the permission to go ahead and give them the special use permit. Now, I've talked to opposing counsel. He disagrees with that. But having said that, he may agree that at least this august body has the power to waive those fees and allow them to reapply. Now, the rationale for that is most properties in the surrounding area, and including the contiguous properties, have all outside storage. So the concept of 20 outside storage in this industrially zoned area is a fact of life for the area, not causing any additional problems. Now, the staff report stated that if a special use permit is approved, the applicant will store construction equipment and materials in conformance with Sparks Municipal Code 20.41085. Also, an important item that was brought up, that if a special use permit is granted, here's what else happens, that the Mr. Brewer's construction company office would also become legally established if the conditions of this proposed special use permit are satisfied. And one of the uses allowed in the master plan, which is designated as industrial, is storage. Other uses are warehousing and office space. One of the action strategies is apply specific conditions of approval tailored for each development proposal. And this means that the city can create certain conditions that require the landowner to comply in order to keep a special use permit. This is a good thing, and the city can create the requisite conditions that satisfy its concerns for the property in the area. And they did that. There was the planning department moved to get all their findings in and all their conditions in to do exactly that. The planning department stated in its report that the application as submitted and conditioned is compatible with the existing uses of the adjacent properties as outlined. Now, the conditions of approval were that if he gets a special use permit that the planning department wanted, he has to satisfy these conditions in a year. Number two, the outside storage shall adhere to the Sparks Municipal Code, and you've got a control on that. 6% of the parcel needs to be landscaped, including landscaping strips on the street frontage. 6 parking spaces shall be installed. The applicant shall comply with all the requirements of the fire chief. A pedestrian path shall be maintained around the building all the way around the building, 4 feet wide, allowing emergency responders to access the rear of the parcel. The applicant shall comply with all the requirements of the building official prior to the issuance of the building permit or business license. The building permit number A11000310, referenced earlier by opposing counsel, shall be completed and a certificate of occupancy received by the applicant. And the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the engineering department, including a reversion of acreage to eliminate the property line running through the center of the property. Now, in sum, we have a guy that's running his business for 26 years, and the next thing you know, the city says you can't do that. You need a special use permit to have outside storage in an area industrial, in, I believe, Ward 1, for all these years. And we all know America had a little problem with real estate, and people that build it were hurt substantially. There were some health issues for Mr. Boer as well. But an old health issue unfortunately caused him to miss the Planning Commission meeting. He's an insulin-dependent diabetic. He had an attack. He knew what to do: eat the right things, make sure you're in appropriate condition to drive the car to the Planning Commission meeting, and the Faustian choice of, do I get there or do I do the right thing? And he was a little late. And he was able to drive the car when he was able to drive the car, but it made him a little late. Now, I've looked at the notes of the Planning Commission meeting and the people who voted there, and one of them said, well, if he's not here, you know, I can't approve what the planning department wants to do because I can't ask him any question because he's not here. Others were concerned with, a couple of neighbors were complaining about storage, that they all have outside storage. And so he wasn't able to respond. And then, of course, since he missed the ability to appeal that by 1 day, we were told by the city attorney's office, sorry, we don't have any jurisdiction near this anymore. So you'll just have to wait 6 months, get some more money, and apply again. We ask that you allow him to apply for special use permit and waive the fees. He could use that money to clean up some of the things that the city wants him to do, as opposed to reapply for $2,000 or thereabouts, which it cost him originally. Having said that, that's the request that we asked. We've got a property that's now under lock and key because he's afraid that if he uses it for anything, because his business license was denied, he goes to jail. And so he doesn't want that to happen. So we want to resurrect this planning commission process to the extent that this august body can do that, and waive those fees and get this matter reset in front of the planning commission. And we're open for any questions.
You know, when our code enforcement officer, Joe Rodriguez, said that the property was not in compliance with Sparks Municipal Code and would therefore not qualify for a business license, why didn't you just clean up the property?
I did. I was cleaning up the property.
Do you have any pictures? Do you have any pictures or anything? We can see how this property looked before and after?
Yeah. We have pictures where I've done the whole front of the building. I've removed approximately 8 loads of good material just to provide access through there. We had pictures, but I guess we don't have them with us. I can bring them to you if you...
Opposing counsel has indicated that he had, I think, zoning enforcement officer go out and look at it today.
You have some pictures for today?
I do, but they're not printed out. If I can have 5 minutes, I can get them printed out. I have these, Mr. Kevin, you can look at that are in our file. That if you want to use those, we're more than welcome.
You can look. You can look.
Okay.
Let me just state for the record also that the matter was opened by the city attorney by, well, it's kind of a nuisance. I mean, there's no question that he can be cited for a nuisance under the health and safety and welfare codes that the city has in place, and be cited and come and respond to that. But he hasn't been cited for that. So this aspect of kind of a nuisance is a little too nebulous, I think, for at least this body to conclude that a nuisance exists at this point. So I just argued that.
Okay, well, we haven't seen that. You have. Mr. Schmidt.
Would you like us to put those so I can see them?
Well, unfortunately, the pictures these pictures are over 8 years old, and 8 months old, don't represent the state of what the property is today, but
I think we can get to the bottom of this, move forward. I'm not sure that there's much more time needs to be spent on this. I got just a couple questions for staff. Which preceded what? Was the request for the special use permit before code enforcement raised the issue, or did code enforcement come after the special use permit? How did this gentleman be notified he needed a special use permit? What preceded it? How did that happen?
I cannot speak knowledgeably as to how Mr. Brewer was informed or determined that he needed a special use permit. All I can tell you is that it has been an ongoing issue with code enforcement since the late 80s in terms of it being a nuisance.
So code enforcement came up that the property was not in compliance with what the business that was there.
Well, either not in compliance with respect to a special use permit or just a nuisance in general. I would also say that the outdoor storage uses associated with the surrounding properties are allowed under the special use permit process.
So what is our grandfather time? When somebody's on a piece of property, the way I'm understanding this, because code enforcement had an issue, we researched it, found that there wasn't an active special use permit, the building was not in compliance. When did the building become not in compliance?
The building has never been in compliance.
Never been in compliance.
So there is no grandfather.
Who applied for the 1987 special use? 86.
The previous owner.
The previous owner did, and they didn't follow through with anything.
They did not.
Okay. So if I'm understanding, all you're asking for is the waiver of fees, you'll go back and apply for a special use permit, you'll comply with all the staff's recommendations, things like that, to get this done. Okay. Will you have all the staff conditions, you know what they are, will you have all those met before the 6 weeks or 8 weeks for the planning commission?
No, because they're substantial in terms of the conditions.
Except for the parking lot and the landscaping. Will you have the property cleaned up in 8 weeks before the planning commission hears it?
I believe we can do that within the context of there has to be allowed some outside storage in this business.
I see cleaned up. I mean, outside storage is one thing, but can this property be cleaned up to where the neighbors can come in and say you've done substantial work and it's cleaned up to the code enforcement? Can we remove the code enforcement issue of the nuisance?
Two things. First, we've already done a lot, and secondly, yes.
Before the planning commission meeting, you can have all that taken care of.
May I say something? What we have there is storage items of plywood and various things that are there, but they're all orderly. The fire department has come through and has not issued any citations. We meet all those requirements. There's walkways to go through. We've cleaned up everything that we can. However, the special use permit allows for some outdoor storage, and it's designated in their special use permit.
So when was the last time code enforcement was out there to look at the issue of outdoor, the orderly of the project?
I asked code enforcement to go out today to take pictures. They sent pictures that are not great pictures because there is a U-Haul truck parked in the way, and they did not feel comfortable peering over fences, I suppose.
Can code enforcement come up with a list of what needs to be done as far as the nuisance stuff? We're talking a legal side and we're also talking an aesthetic side. When can the aesthetic side of code enforcement can be removed out of the picture?
I think code enforcement probably could compile that list, but they would need access to the property to make that list 100%.
I think the communication between the owner and the code enforcement is essential here to be done. I think it's
well, respectfully, Councilman Schmidt, they've been communicating for 20 years.
Well, if I could just respond, opposing city council's painting with a real broad brush when he says 20 years, and what we're asking for is we're going to try. We want to get that special use permit. The concerns here have been whether or not there's an ongoing nuisance. We've never been cited for an ongoing nuisance. The business license for 26 years has been taken away. If there's concerns of cleaning up the property, we're going to certainly do what we need to do and satisfy this body prior to vote. So the question is in the right direction, and we're going to respond. I think it's unfair to say the city of Sparks, we haven't done anything for all these years, but now we're going to do it all, and blame the property owners for 20 years when none of us were really here.
Well, for me, I appreciate anybody who wants to do business in the city of Sparks for 26 years, and I thank you for that. I'm trying to, as a council person who's got several code enforcement issues in my district and other districts that I've been working on for years to get taken on. I know how frustration it is. I know staff is very frustrated with me because I've said, at 3-year mark is too long. We haven't done our job when we have code enforcement issues that go out there for 3 years. If it's been going on 20 years, part of me is happy because then somebody's got a record of a case longer than I've got one, working on. But I think the issue here to me is, when can we get the property cleaned up, get the aesthetics taken care of, and then go to work on the legal issues? It appears that, once we get the business license issue resolved, in 6 months you may not need a special use permit. If you want to go forward with one, I understand that the $2,000, I'm willing to sit down and listen to that, and I believe all the paperwork's done. All we have to do is just, get it on the Planning Commission's agenda to take a look at. You agreed with all the recommendations. I don't think there's anything else to be done with that, but.
And he could spend the $2,000 instead of the fee to clean it up.
And my condition, but, this is Councilwoman Zarati's ward, so I'm going to listen to what she has to say here, is that, when that Planning Commission meeting is held, if that property is cleaned on up, then I think they can go forward. If code enforcement issues are still sitting on out there as far as being a nuisance, then, we made an offer to move it along, but it's not taken care of, and I don't want to see it go. I don't want to see the nuisance issue go along any longer. We got to clean them up at some time.
Ms. Ratty.
So, I need clarification on a number of things. I believe that I heard in the presentations from either side of the issue is that we have a difference of opinion on whether or not the way the outdoor storage is being handled currently, even in its best state, meets, that we have agreement that that's within the city's municipal code, which you keep citing. And so if we don't start agreeing that this is okay, then I don't understand how we would ever get to the point where you're talking about, which is resolution, because if we have two very different worldviews about what is a nuisance and what is a nuisance, we may have a problem. My understanding is that we have two different opinions. So clarify for me, part of it is visual, but part of it, isn't it also having to do with how much square footage is being used for outdoor storage?
That is my understanding of it, and unfortunately, I cannot speak to how much would be allocated under this permit, although certainly, just as a point of clarification, outdoor storage, I believe, would be permitted at some level under this permit.
Because I believe the applicant's counsel was saying that outdoor storage is an allowed use in the industrial area, and he keeps pointing to the fact that he's surrounded by neighbors who have outdoor storage. However, and I'm familiar with this case because I get to hear the complaints, the neighbors that have outdoor storage aren't getting complaints, and there's something that's different, and we don't have the photos, but there's something that's different about how you're handling your outdoor storage compared to how some of the neighbors are handling their outdoor storage that's resulting in complaints. And I believe that the city has asked multiple times now. Council just said that they've never been cited. Is that true?
That is, my understanding, that is true. They have not been cited.
So have they been warned? Because our process has multiple steps.
Multiple times. I'm happy to dig out the letters and the final notices and all of those things dating back to 1988.
So is it a case where we go out and warn, it gets cleaned up, and then we back off, and then we go out and warn, and it gets cleaned up, and we back off?
It does not
or did
seem
we
that way
drop
to
the ball
me.
and not cite?
And I should say that the neighbors at the Planning Commission meeting did say that Mr. Boer had started to make progress, but that in their view, the progress was insufficient. That said, it looks as though, from the file that I have, it looks as though it's a case of, here's a warning, well, here's a letter explaining all the extenuating circumstances. Here's a warning a couple years later, well, here's a letter explaining all the extenuating circumstances. So I can't speak, again, as to what entirely was going on in 1988 or 1997 or the early 2000s, or even as recently as last year.
So there were complaints as recently as last year?
Well, I don't know if they're complaints, but certainly notes in the file from Mr. Rodriguez, notes in the file from Ms. Knox when she was still here.
Okay, so then another clarification then, because it sounded like in your presentation that there was a special use permit application process. It was granted
Yes.
with conditions,
Yes.
and then those conditions were never met.
Right, which means that the special use permit was never issued.
So it expired.
Well, the approval expired. The permit itself didn't expire because it never existed.
Because it never existed. So, and that process was different than the process that we've gone through this time? Is this
No,
the second process, or that's all the
well,
same process?
it's a different application for a special use permit, but it's, in terms of actual process and procedure, it's the same process and procedure.
So I guess has he applied more than once, is what I'm asking?
To my knowledge, Mr. Boer has not applied more than once.
Okay, just the one time?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would like to say, actually, to Councilman Schmidt's comments, I think they're all well taken, but I would like to add that it is my understanding that the actual building permit cannot be final without completion of the parking element as well.
I think we give a year to do that, right?
Well,
The legal stuff.
yes, building
The
permits
parking
are
lot,
valid
the landscaping, you give them a year to do that.
before the permit itself naturally expires, that's correct.
And I might add, and that's been conditioned in to be accomplished if he gets a special use permit.
So let me ask you a question. Would you allow Mr. Rodriguez back on your property to give you a comprehensive list of what needs to be done?
Sure.
And then we can send it back to the planning commission?
Sure. And may I say that when in '88, just to kind of clarify, in 1988, when I got my first citation, I addressed that and fixed it, and then they came back out, and that's the reason it's set for so many years. Then when they came out again, because of the same neighbor to the side of me there that made another complaint, then they gave me another citation, and I fixed that, and that's the reason they didn't, not citation, I'm sorry, what do you call it?
Warning.
Warning, yeah. So I took care of those, and that's the reason I've never gotten a citation. But each time they come out, they want more done, and I've been removing stuff right along. But I still had outdoor storage, just like everybody in the entire area has outdoor storage. Maybe mine isn't as kempt and perfect as the rest of some of the others are, but it's got just as much, the neighbor's got just as many things piled up there as I do. And I'm using them, I was using them all the time in construction, so it's not something that just was, stored there and it's a mess. I've cleaned up any kind of mess. There's no fire hazard. Fire department every year comes by and makes an inspection, and they've passed everything. So there's no nuisance that I know of there, except maybe a neighbor's visual.
Ms. Ratty?
Do you know how much square footage you're allowed outdoor storage on your property?
That would have to be determined, from what I understand, by the special use permit.
Okay, so without the special use permit, none is allowed. Is that the
That's
case? Okay, so that's why the violation. Okay.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Doug, I just had a lunchtime with Mr. Coots and staff, this discussion on another project, exact same thing. And we're advised that a citation cannot be issued because over the course of a 3-year period, progress has been made. Nobody knows what progress in the next 10 years is going to look like, if it's going to be resolved or not, but progress has been made over 3 years on a complete mess. Is that the reason in this case that no citation was issued? Because there was progress being made on it, and the only thing that we have as a city at this point, the only thing we can hang our hat on is to refuse to issue a business license.
At this juncture, I would say that it's not the only thing, but it's the most effective thing in terms of the business license. I would say that the situation you are describing, to my knowledge, is a different situation with respect to the fact that the owner is not the actual occupant of the property, and that has been some of the difficulty. And the reason for the interpretation that progress over 3 years has been used to preclude citation is that that case, it is my understanding from the meetings I've been in, we would not be looking at a citation, we would just be asking a judge for permission to go and abate the nuisance ourselves. And from my position, I do not feel comfortable going to a judge and saying, well, they are making substantial progress, but you should still let us go.
Substantial is a relative term.
I agree.
A green trash can a week is progress. It is not substantial progress. I mean, it's so, it's just, and I got this whole issue with how we discriminate people who own property. We discriminate against people who are absentee owners in this city. I've seen it over and over again, and I think it's just, I think it's ridiculous. If somebody wants to invest money in this community, they should have the right to invest that money. And we apply one set of rules for somebody who lives in that house. We apply a different set of rules for somebody who's outside that house. And I think that's wrong. I think it's just, I just don't understand how it holds on up. But, that's code enforcement. So I think we got to sit down and take a look at this and see what the owners want to do here and find a way to get the property cleaned up. I think that's got to be our number one attention right now.
I agree with that, and I would just caution the council that I do not think that you can send the issue back to the Planning Commission. I think it needs to be left up to Mr. Brewer to file a reapplication, however the council decides.
Okay, but he can't get a special use permit unless he has a business license, and he can't get a business license until he cleans up the property. Is that correct?
I don't know if that's correct.
The strategy that we were told is that if you don't get it, after 26 years of business, if you don't get a special use permit, then you aren't entitled to a business license. So he applied, he was sick, he didn't make it to the meeting where they approved it to have happen, and so he didn't make it there. And then they said, well, you didn't make it there, you didn't appeal in time, you now don't have a business license. And it's kind of a catch-22. And when opposing counsel was talking about what's effective with a business license, when you deny a business license, here's what's effective. You end the business. For 26 years you have a business, now you don't. All we're asking for is some financial relief and some help from this august body to go back to the Planning Commission, waive those $2,000 fees, have them do what the city wants them to do, and go forward, which was all tabled and ready to happen, but he had that insulin attack and he wasn't able to go to the meeting. Thank you.
The special use permit is a zoning decision and is not dependent on the existence of a business license for application.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Well, since we're not allowed to do anything, I think that you should pull your appeal and just go apply for a special use permit. And we will suggest, as the city council, or I'll suggest, and we'll see how it goes, that the fees be waived.
I do believe that you have the authority to do that.
To
waive the fees. If that is the motion you want to make.
Yeah, but we don't have the ability to send the special use permit back.
You do not.
But we do have the ability to make a motion that if he decides to reapply for a special use permit, we waive the fees?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Attorney? Chet?
Folks, this is a business license denial appeal. And we've heard a lot of different things here today, and I hate to be a killjoy here, but I've yet to hear anything from the very professional counsel for this particular business telling the city council that the business is in fact doing business legally here. Now, this has been continued twice already. The special use permit issue, the waiver of the fee issue, none of these are on the agenda. These issues are properly brought to the Planning Commission, not to the city council meeting during a business license matter. So I really think that you lack the jurisdiction to, we've heard a lot of background information here, but the issue before the city council tonight on the properly agendized matter is whether or not the appellant should have a business license, and if the city was somehow incorrect when we said you're conducting business illegally, therefore you're not entitled to a renewal of your business license. That's the sole issue before the city council this afternoon, not these issues concerning I mean, for crying out loud, we got all kinds of arguments. You were sick. You had diabetes on the night of your special use permit. Well, you had plenty of time between then, by Nevada law, to appeal that, but you didn't. Those are all collateral arguments. You don't need to hear that kind of back and forth banter here. The question is, were you conducting business legally? I think it's very apparent that he was not conducting business legally, and whether or not he's entitled to a business license. And all this other relief you're being asked for tonight is not appropriately brought to the city council.
Ms. Ratty?
May I just respond to, in due deference to the position of the city attorney, he's taking a real tough stance. We've raised this issue. Thank you. Part of mine is to try to make sure we have an active business, continue to do business in the city of Sparks to the benefit not only of the Sparks businessmen, but all people who live here. Having said that, what we really ask for is a waiver of the fees.
Well, apparently, that's not on our, we're not agendized to do that.
Well,
so
I believe
if we're not agendized to take that type of action, then we can't do it. We have to deal with the issue in front of us, which is the appeal of the denial of the business license. So let's deal with that. Ms. Ratty?
Well, and that's just what I was going to ask, is what is the legal path forward for Mr. Boer? So, I mean, this is one step today. So if we were to deny the business license today, what's his path forward to be back in business?
The
path forward.
I'm asking
based
council.
on the opinion of the city attorney, would be to request, if they are in fact intent on seeking the relief they've asked for, I believe the path forward would be to request that an agenda item be placed on a future agenda regarding the waiver of the fees. And then to apply essentially at his leisure for a special use permit from the city.
Because you need the special use permit to be operating legally. To be operating legally, then you can get your business license.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically the city's position.
Yes.
And can we go back real quickly to the, you alluded to that we're making some changes in the Conductor Heights area.
Yes.
And so we're going to make those changes, and then a process is going to play out. And if those changes were made, then the applicant no longer needs a special use permit.
That's my understanding of the changes. That's correct.
So, and that is because
I'm informed that he would still need a site plan review to do outdoor storage.
okay. So there's still a process that he would have to go through to get to a legal allowance of outdoor storage. So our problem here is, for whatever reason, for 26 years or however many years, there's been outdoor storage, but it has never been legal.
That's correct.
And today is the day that we're saying, if you're going to have outdoor storage, it must be legal.
Well, I don't know that today's the day. I think
Well,
the day
because we're pulling a business license, and so we're pulling that business license because it's not,
Yes.
the business is not being operated legally, and the business is being operated legally because it doesn't have a special use permit, in this case, for outdoor storage.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Lawson?
Thank you.
I think we've gone round and round. The bottom line is, I think we just need a vote on this. It's really hard for me to deny a guy a business license for sure, but in this case, Mr. Boer, it's just an excuse after excuse, and I understand, you still have an outstanding final on a building permit. You went through the great times too that everyone else did, so this didn't happen overnight. You could have brought your building in compliance and got your building license, your building permit finalized and all that, because I know a lot of people in construction made a lot of money in the 2000s. So for me, I hope you can find your way back to getting your business going again, but I can't see us overturning what the denial of the business license.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And I'd like to, if I could follow up with the city attorney's question. So I see several issues on in here that for the reason for denial of the business license, and I'd like to go ahead and take each one so I understand. First one is saying that he's not registered with the state of Nevada as acoustical drywall services. Is that correct?
It's my understanding that there is no LLC named Acoustical and Drywall Services.
Do we have a DBA that falls under that you can provide the city attorneys that will cover that item?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that issue as far as the licensing is done. So the way I see this, that the only other thing that you're not in compliance with is a special use permit. Is that correct? Is that the other legal issue here?
That is correct.
The special use permit was derived because of a complaint in cleaning the property up. Is that correct?
I don't think that we know exactly
how Mr. Boer made the decision that he needed a special use permit.
Well, that's what I'm asking about. Who came first here? I mean, did you wake up one morning and decide that, gosh, I must be out of compliance, let me call the city of Sparks and see if I need a special use permit? How did you get notified you needed a special use permit for your property?
Can I answer that?
I've been asking that question for 30 minutes now.
The city came forward and told him that he needed one.
And how did the city find out that you did not have a special use permit for your property?
Because of the neighbor's complaints. The neighbor next
So
door.
we are in an ordinance issue where a neighbor complained and code violation, staff found out he didn't have a special use permit, and then what did you do about it? Am I correct here, guys? Let's make sure staff, I get the right chain of events here so we know what's going on.
It's my understanding in speaking with Mr. Ornelas that it's kind of been a cycle. It's been a complaint, and then code enforcement goes out. It comes to light that he doesn't have a special use permit to have the outdoor storage. He's warned maybe a couple times, and the process repeats itself.
Okay, so then we told him he needed a special use permit. Then what did he say? What did he do when we told him he needed a special use permit?
And I applied for one.
You applied for the special use
Immediately,
permit,
yes. Mhm.
and you missed a meeting.
I missed the meeting.
You missed a meeting, and so now you did everything staff asked you to do to comply, to get your list and everything else like here, and
I agreed to all the contingencies.
And we're here to beat up a 26-year business in a community because he missed a meeting after everything you asked him to do, he came forward to do to get the special use permit. Now, I understand there's issues with the special use permit. You asked him to get it cleaned on up. He didn't do that.
Paid the fees.
Paid the fees to it, and he missed a meeting.
And I believe you missed the meeting and the appeal.
That's
Time
correct.
frame.
So you
You
missed
missed
a day
them both.
on the
Yes.
appeal, too.
You missed them both.
I understand. All I'm trying to do is get at is, what is the issue here?
The issue
If
here is that
if planning commission had continued the meeting to find out why the owner wasn't there, which I've sat on the planning commission for 6 years, I know we do that all the time. If there's a problem, we continue it until we get the owners to find out what's going on. Planning commission didn't do that. They decided to go ahead and not do it. Planning commission had said, let's hold off for 2 weeks and find out what's going on with the owner. We wouldn't be here today, would it?
Well, the Planning Commission did deny it without prejudice, which means he could have reapplied at any juncture between April 5th and now.
But your letters don't say that. Your letters
Actually,
say they had to wait
the
6
letter,
months.
the notice of denial does say that. And I think the issue here today is that a business has been operated illegally for 26 years, and we finally, because of the unproductive nature of the warnings time and time again, have decided that enough is enough.
And then how many business licenses do we issue out there every year that have non-compliance on them?
I couldn't say.
Probably a bunch. I can tell you that right now. We have a whole bunch, because we can see these issues all the time, of issues that don't have special use permits, that have been grandfathered in. I would say a business has been operating on a piece of property for 26 years, probably has the rights to operate there the way they've been operating for 26 years.
I would respectfully disagree. Unless it was legally established, there would be no grandfather period.
Well, I think we're trying to send a real clear message to the business community. We're trying to send a very clear message to the business community here, and I think we need to be careful what message we're sending.
Ms. Ratty.
So I guess my summary would be, doesn't have a special use permit to operate the building, the property legally, was asked to come into compliance with that several times, finally came forward, paid the fees, went through the process, didn't follow through with the process, because what I heard was the conditions weren't met, so it couldn't be granted. Then it was appealed.
I object to that finding, if I might. because
You know,
it wasn't-
let's let the council talk about this for a minute. No,
So-
we're going back and forth on this thing, and we need to.
My apologies,
do
but
this.
if
Well,
I-
let her finish her comments, and then I'll let you speak.
I
How's that?
appreciate that. Thank you.
And then didn't show up for the meeting, which I'm sympathetic to, but then also didn't appeal. And if it was denied without prejudice, had several opportunities from April 5th on to make this right, and did not do so. That's my understanding. So I think we should send a message to the business community as well, which is, we've been bending over backwards to be friendly here in the city of Sparks in a lot of different ways, but the bottom line is, at some point, you have to draw a line and say, businesses have to be operated legally in the city of Sparks. And sometimes it comes to our attention because of complaint, That's how we find out. We don't know any other way. But once it comes to our attention, I don't think we can just look the other way and say, well, we're business friendly. So I think there's an equal but opposite message to be sent, which is you have to operate your business legally in the city of Sparks. Otherwise, what's the point of this entire exercise? So I'm getting to the point of making a motion, but if you'd like to allow.
No, you can make a motion. We have discussion.
Okay. So I would.
Send me 45 down here, so I can chew on it.
I would recommend that I would make a motion that we deny the appeal.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion would you like to add?
Well, but I would like to add that there weren't additional citations of after he made his application for a special use permit. And as a matter of fact, the city, the planning commission agreed to it. The department agreed to it and had findings and conditions. The only thing he didn't do was he got sick and he didn't go to the meeting, so he's able to answer some questions of the commissioner. And the other thing that he didn't do was he appealed on the 22nd day, it was 21 days that he had to appeal. So, with those points of clarification, I guess the matter can go to vote.
Okay. Any further discussion from the council?
Did we have any other public comment on this?
It's not a public comment.
But I was asking, nobody's here.
Okay. See no more discussion, please vote. It passes 4-1. Mr. Schmidt is a no. Thank you. Move on to 6.3. Yes.
I also point out some dates that this all started back in April. The letters I'm showing you all started in June.
Okay, well, we're done with that item right now, so.
Thank you for your deliberate consideration.
Thank you. Okay, 6.3, consideration and possible acceptance of a justice assistant grant in the amount of $10,000. Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I come before you today asking for permission to apply, or we have applied for, and asking permission and approval for a $10,000 reimbursement grant from the National Child Advocacy Center to provide forensic interview class for our detectives. Typically, we would send individual detectives out of state to provide for this training. We had an opportunity through Sergeant Greta Wachowski, who was able to work with Reno and Washoe County, to bring this training to the Regional Public Safety Training Center, and then she took the initiative herself to work with our grant administrator and find an opportunity for the state of Nevada through the Justice Assistance Program to pay $10,000 of the $12,000 grant. So what would normally cost us anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 is going to cost us approximately $350 for 4 detectives to go to some pretty intensive training as required by NRS.
Okay, any questions or comments? Ms. Ratty.
Motion to accept the Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $10,000 to provide specialized police training.
We have a motion, Mr. Lawson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 6.5. Consideration of possible approval of a contract for sewer, storm drain, and effluent systems rate study analysis.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. For the record, Andy Hummel, Utility Engineering Manager for the City of Sparks. The item you have before you today is a professional services contract with FCS Group, teamed with CH Hume Hill to provide utility rate analysis for us for our sanitary sewer, storm drain, and effluent systems. In choosing this group, we went through an RFP process. 6 firms responded. They were ranked, and then the top 3 were invited to interview with the city. Through that process, determined that FCS Group was the most qualified to provide the work. The scope was negotiated as presented, and we're here to discuss.
Okay, any questions, comments for Andy? Looking for a motion. Today. Huh? Mr. Lawson.
I move to approve the contract for storm drain and effluent systems rate study analysis with FCS Group in the amount of $137,651.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
6.6, consideration and possible direction to initiate a zone change removing the Conductor Heights transitional overlay in the industrial zoning district. Mr. Rundle.
Good afternoon, Jim Rundle, Senior Planner. Put up a quick map to reflect what we're talking about. Mayor Martini received a correspondence regarding the transitional overlay in the industrial area. I don't know if the colors come through on the overhead, but essentially we have Rock Boulevard. This would be Interstate 80 up here to the north. And we have Pacific, Fraser, over in the proximity of the Public Works Yard, Community Services Yard, whatever it's called now.
$2.
Yeah.
As the map illustrates, there's some blue parcels over there and purple. The purple represents industrially zoned properties. 95% of the property south of Interstate 80 is zoned industrial. The properties here are zoned industrial with the transitional overlay. The transitional overlay was put there, I think, I wrote it in the report, and now the year escapes me, but I'm going to say the early 1980s, as the area started transitioning over to heavier industrial. It was to protect the residences that were still there and require industrial uses to get special use permits so impacts could be mitigated to the residences that were still there. I think that the transitional overlay has served the intent. It's been in place for 30 years, and it may be appropriate to remove that transitional overlay and just designate those parcels with an industrial designation. What that would mean for the properties that currently have the transitional overlay on them is that not every single use that they propose on the property would require a special use permit. They would be treated the same as all the other industrial zone properties in the city of Sparks. And that concludes my present. So essentially, one last thing, what Mayor Martini is asking the council today is that the council sponsor allowing staff to work on a zoning code or a zoning change for those properties. And that concludes my presentation.
Mr. Lawson.
Just a quick question. Jimmy, how many residents are still in there? How many people actually live full-time there?
Well, I can't give an exact answer, but a lot of those.
A ballpark.
I'm scared to even give a ballpark. I don't think there's very many residences left. I don't think there's a lot of people living down there anymore.
Okay.
I haven't gone down to survey. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ratty.
I would just say, there aren't a lot, but there are families living there, because for perspective, when we lost the park in that neighborhood, there were quite a number of folks who brought it to my attention. So it's not just one or two, but there are a number of people who still live there.
Okay, are we completely legal in this since we don't have an attorney in the room? We can run crazy. Any more questions or comments? There's something amok with this here. Okay, looking for a motion.
I'm sorry, I guess I do have a question. Do we have any concerns about this? I know it came as a request from a citizen through the mayor. Do we have any concerns about heading in this direction, or there's still lots of time in the process to bring concerns forward?
Are you just asking me personally? I guess.
Oh, run amok, yes.
I think it's the right thing to do.
You think it's the right thing to do? Okay. So I would move to direct staff to initiate a zone change to remove the transitional overlay from parcels within the Conductor Heights.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. See what we can do when we're allowed to run amok.
And quickly.
Yeah, do things quickly.
I know. Okay, 6.7, consideration of possible direction to initiate a code amendment to allow adult care facilities for more than 5 residents in residential districts. Mr. Rundle.
to present a request that Councilman Smith received from a citizen. Currently, the residential zoning districts in the city of Sparks inhibit or prohibit a resident from doing adult care in their home if they want to do it for more than 5 people. With certain building code and fire code, well, if you do certain things in the home, the fire code and building code can allow you to do more in a residence. However, the zoning code for the city of Sparks would not allow for that. So it may be appropriate that that zoning code be changed and work more in conjunction with the building and fire codes. And if this item were to be approved, staff would research that and determine and make a recommendation to the Planning Commission and Council on whether that's appropriate for the city of Sparks.
And Jim, I asked this to come forward because one of the folks that has one of these facilities had the fire inspection, and he was told that they could actually go to 8 people instead of 5, and partly because they had sprinklered and everything else, so they were already in compliance.
And I think that they went, they got the fire inspection. From what I understand, the fire inspector said the fire code would allow it. However, the zoning code doesn't allow it. And that's the problem that the citizen is having.
And what are we looking at today? To change the code or just to...
This would essentially allow staff to make a recommendation to change the code.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt?
Mayor Pro Tem, would a special use permit apply in this situation?
No.
Could he do it under a special use permit?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Reddy?
So that's where we're headed here, is that any home in a residential district that could meet the fire and, is it police?
Building.
Building. So fire and building requirements then would be allowed to provide some form of adult group care in their home.
Potentially.
They can already do it up to 5.
They can do up to 5.
Would allow for more than 5.
From what I understand, the fire code says if you sprinkler the building, you can the house, you can do more. The zoning code doesn't allow for that, so they'd be in violation of the zoning code. So if the council were to approve it today, staff would research it and essentially outline the best thing for the city of Sparks in staff's opinion and make that proposal. But from what I understand, what you said, Councilwoman Ratty, is probably appropriate.
Okay. But again, during that process, if you had concerns about the size of the property or setbacks or
Yes.
whatever you might want to, traffic, whatever you might want to apply, that's when you would bring those concerns forward?
Yes, we'll research it, find out what other city jurisdictions do, and as we do research our planning, our planning policies, that this has probably been done somewhere else, and find out what impacts there are, and come up with some type of proposal for the Planning Commission and City Council to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Looking for a motion? I'll make the motion for 6.7 to proceed as outlined by staff. Ms. Ratty? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Jim. 6.8, consideration and possible approval of amendment number 1 to the AT&T, I'll flip the page here, agreement, A3892.
Members of the council, Chris Cobb, Capital Projects Manager for the record. Before you this evening is actually 2 items. This is the first one is an amendment to the original agreement that you approved earlier this year, almost, I believe, right after the first of the year, to AT&T. This is part of the Prater Way improvements that are partially funded through NDOT Stewardship Program. And actually, this agreement was with AT&T to cover their portion of costs of undergrounding part of their utilities that were on the overhead poles. The original agreement was only covered their labor and the cost of pulling the wire through there. It did not include the cost of trenching, their portion of covering the trenching cost, which is shared by AT&T, Nevada Energy, as well as Charter Cable. When the bids were received by Nevada Energy, we, at that time, all of a sudden, here's a third of the costs that we were supposed to cover for AT&T that were not in an original agreement. So since that time has passed, the majority of these costs and the changes to the agreement are the contractor's portion of the third that AT&T we would owe them for the trenching, as well as the increase in cost for the wire and stuff that will be pulled through there. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions? Comments? Looking for a motion? Ms. Ratty?
Move to approve change order number 1 for the adjustment of utility facilities between the city and AT&T.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Councilman Lawson.
Question, I think that's the next one.
No, whoops.
This one is just an amendment.
6.8.
This one's just an
Well, I'm
amendment to
sorry,
the
I didn't
agreement.
listen.
Sorry. So
So.
I'll withdraw
okay,
that motion.
How about a new motion?
How about if I try?
Please.
I think I'm on the right
one.
Okay, next up the bat.
Okay.
Second team, man.
I'm rooting for you.
I move to approve amendment number 1 to the AT&T Agreement A 3892 for the adjustment of utility facilities between city and AT&T.
Okay, would you like to second that, Ms. Reddy?
I would love to second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, that passes unanimously. Chris, you're on for 6.9, consideration of possible approval of change order number 1 for the adjustment of utility facilities between the city and AT&T.
Again, Chris Cobb, Capital Projects Manager. This is the actual change order to the agreement. And just to point out that the funds that will be used to pay for this will be part of the funds that were received from the state of Nevada and the utility reimbursement agreement. So this is not city funds. I do want to make that clear.
Okay, any questions? Ms. Ratty, would you like to make that
I
motion?
would love to make this motion to approve the change order number 1 for the adjustment of utility fee facilities.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to number 8, planning and zoning public hearings and action items. 8.1, consideration of possible action on a request for reduced side yard setbacks for the Carrera subdivision within Phase 3 of the Neandria Plan Development, PCN 03080. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For the record, Tim Thompson, Senior Planner. This is somewhat of a unique request. The Neandria Plan Development Handbook has a provision for reduced setbacks depending on how each subdivision is classified. Lennar Homes is asking to take advantage of those reduced setbacks for their Carrera subdivision. On the overhead, outlined in red is the entire subdivision, and then the highlighted parcels are actually the parcels in question. Currently, the handbook requires that there be a minimum 7.5-foot side yard setback with a minimum of 20 feet between structures on adjacent properties. And what this reduction would allow for is a 5-foot setback with 15 feet between structures on adjacent properties. The handbook states that this can be approved so long as the Design Control Committee, the Planning Commission, and City Council agree that a variety of approved architectural styles within the subdivision, or that there is a variety of approved architectural styles within the subdivision. And staff does believe that there is a variety. In fact, with this reduction, the hope is that it will actually provide some additional products to be utilized on these properties, which would actually enhance that. And so both staff and the Planning Commission are recommending that you approve this reduction request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Lawson?
Just a quick, Tim. How many additional parcels does that allow them to get in then, in the same space?
It's not allowing any additional lots. The lots are already mapped. Essentially, what it's allowing is for a larger
Okay.
product.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll open up for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. And that is Ward number 3, I believe, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Move to approve 8.1 as outlined by staff. We have a second. Mr. Lawson. Any further discussion? Please, seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Tim. 8.2, public hearing, bill number 2646, PCN 12009. DC2 LLC to change the zoning from professional office to general commercial. Tim?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Tim Thompson, Senior Planner for the record. This is a public hearing, second reading for a proposed zone change. The property is located on the southeast corner of Vista Boulevard and Basco Way. Currently, the property is zoned office professional, professional office, and the applicant is wanting to change that zoning to C2 general commercial. You may recall several council meetings ago, there was consideration of a master plan amendment, the first to remove the Aratzable East area plan from the city's master plan, and then a subsequent master plan amendment to actually change the land use on this particular parcel from office professional to general commercial land use. That master plan amendment was approved and certified by the City Council, and this is the follow-up zone change that would take it again from professional office to C2 general commercial. Staff has been able to make the applicable findings, and both staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of this particular item. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tim? Okay, this is public. I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody like to speak at this time? Yes, sir. State your name for the record.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Chris Baker here on behalf of the applicant. I'd just like to thank staff for their time and state that we agree with the Planning Commission and staff's recommendation for approval. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Looking for a motion? No motion? No, it's Mike. It's Ron's ward.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve bill number 2646 for PCN 12009, adopting findings Z1 through Z3, and the facts supporting these findings is set forth in the staff report.
Okay, Julie. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, comments from the City Council, City Manager? Okay, I'll open it up for comments from the public. Anybody in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. And we are adjourned. And moving on, we'll call the order of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of 9/10/2012 with a roll call, please.
Chairman Smith?
Here.
Agency Secretary Patterson here. Agency members Ratty? Here. Lawson?
Here.
Martini absent. Kerrigan?
Here.
Schmidt?
Here.
Chief Administrative Officer Carey?
Here.
Agency Attorney Adams?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, I'll open up the public. Anybody in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the agency. Looking for approval of the agenda. We don't pull anything out? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We don't have any minutes to approve. Number 4, consideration of possible approval of a request from Sparks High School for up to $17,000 in funding for replacement of their reader board sign. Armando.
Chairman Smith, members of the agency board, my name is Armando Ornelas, city planner. This is a request for a $17,000 appropriation from Sparks High School and really from the Washington County School District. The funding would be used to replace the reader board in front of the school. As proposed by your staff, the agency would provide the district the funds on a reimbursement basis as actual costs are incurred up to this amount. The reader board is about 25 years old and has reached the end of its life. Ms. Amy Maribel, she's one of the vice principals at Sparks High, is here. And she could probably address the specific questions that you may have about the function of the board and what they would be looking for in terms of a new board better than I can, so I would suggest that you address those questions to her. And as discussed in the staff report, the 2000 amended redevelopment plan for redevelopment area 1 provides for a partnership between the redevelopment agency and the school district to improve the schools in the district. So I think you have a basis for approving this request if you choose to do so. That concludes my presentation.
Amy, would you like to come down and say a few words? Welcome, Amy.
Members of the council, thank you for having me here today. Sparks High is a true community school, and a lot of our communication is through that reader board that pretty much no longer functions. And our student leadership who care for the board and the messages that go up on the board have a very difficult time currently getting any type of message because of the broken board itself and the letters that we have existing to make up those messages to get out to our community. So we are very excited about the hopes of purchasing a new reader board and any assistance that you can give.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions? Mr. Kerrigan.
Amy, would you do me a favor if this gets approved? Would you let everybody know, like the teachers at Sparks High School, that the city council did it and not the Washoe County School District?
Absolutely.
And I'm only saying that because we helped out Robert Mitchell one time with all their new play equipment. And when I mentioned that at Robert Mitchell, one of the teachers came up and said, "How dare you take credit for something the Washoe County School District did?" So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. Lawson.
Just for consistency purposes, once again, this is kind of a double taxation thing. You know, that we're paying our taxes through the Washoe County School District. Don't mind helping out. I think it's a good idea, but as Mike said, we need to keep on the school district and let them know that Sparks stepped up to help, but this is kind of an exception, not the rule. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Ratty.
Yeah, I'm going to take maybe a little bit different stance. I'm supporting this. I don't necessarily see the double taxation piece as much in this because redevelopment districts benefit from a share of taxes that would have otherwise gone to the school districts. So I think we have a way to get here on redevelopment that might be different if this was coming from a general fund source. But I do think that we may need to consider a process because I think that we may have lots of other requests, and there's certainly plenty of needs out there. And I think at some point we have to figure out what we say yes to and what we say no to because we can't say yes to everything. So I'm definitely supporting this today. I'm not concerned about the double taxation issue because it is redevelopment funds and because redevelopment funds do sometimes, the schools, I know that's a big debate, but I do think it is different than general fund. But I'll make the motion. I move to approve a not to exceed appropriation of $17,000 for a replacement reader board for Sparks High School.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5, comments from the agency or Chief Administrative Officer. Any comments? Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, in keeping with what Julia said, I agree with you about a process, and maybe we can put that on our agenda for our retreat, that we talk about a process for, I don't know, ward. We've talked about it before, and I think we disapproved it a couple times. Maybe it's time to talk about it again for ward enhancement programs. How's that? Does that sound good?
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll open up to the public for comment. Anybody in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the agency, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.